Live now.
Mike, do you want to do the preamble then?
I'll talk whenever you introduce me.
Okay. I think that comes later. All right. My name is Clark Roush, and on behalf of the Nebraska Arts Council, I'd like to welcome you to this panel meeting. We have convened to review applications in the annual Programs in Arts Learning grant category. Decisions made by this panel will determine the funding for all applications. They will be reviewed by the NAC Council at the next meeting to convene on June 10, 2025. I'd like for each panelist to introduce yourself to one another and to those listening in, and I'll call upon you one by one. Camelia?
Hi, my name is Camelia Ellen Tobley, and I'm really happy to be here today. I live in Cheyenne, Wyoming, and I do have a background in arts education. I worked in administration, similar to what Anne does, for many years, but currently I am a curator at the Cheyenne Depot Museum. I run an art gallery, and I also do contract grant writing for a number of organizations around Wyoming, among other things. Thank you.
Thank you. Chris?
Hello, good morning, everyone. My name is Chris Sweat, and I live in Nashville, Tennessee. I serve as Director of Arts Education for the Tennessee Arts Commission, and my experience is in music education and theater and arts administration.
Thank you. Cody?
Hi, I'm Cody Tallarico. I'm the Arts Education Specialist at the Nebraska Department of Education in the Office of Teaching, Learning, and Assessment. And I lead and support all 5 of the art subjects: dance, music, theater, media arts, and visual arts. My teaching background, I taught for the Bellevue Public Schools and I taught music for 23 years before coming to the department. I've also been a conductor, an adjunct instructor at UNO, University of Nebraska, Omaha, and I'm also a professional musician in the Omaha, Nebraska area.
Thank you. In addition to panelists, Nebraska Arts Council staff members present today include Mike Markey, Executive Director, Ann Alston, Program Specialist, Jennifer Drybelbus, Grants Administrator. She's managing scoring in the online grant system. Joshua Brown, Program Coordinator, is taking minutes. Sam Hennig, Communications Manager, is on hand to assist with online technical issues. Mike, would you like to say anything?
Sure. Thank you, Doctor. And thank you very much for leading us through this panel process. I appreciate your time, as I do for all of the panelists. And Anne has put together a wonderful group of folks here from all over the country to look at your applications. I find this grant category fascinating, not only because it's arts education and that's so important to the work that we do, but because this is a recurring programs, and it's always interesting to see how these programs develop and change over the years. So thank you all the applicants for sharing that with us and for the ongoing work that you do in arts education. It's very much appreciated. I want to speak real quickly about where we are with our funding for the next couple of years, because it's so important to the work that we do and the work that you do. The state budget is being finalized this week, even as we speak. And at the present time, we fully anticipate that our funding there will continue at the level that it has been. And that's thanks to a lot of the efforts that you guys have been doing to, again, make sure that your elected representatives are aware of the value of the funding for your programs and for the arts across the state. I encourage you to keep that up. Let your representatives know the work that you're doing, invite them to your programs, and thank them afterwards for their work and for their support for public art. Now, more now than ever, it's also important to remember to communicate with your congressional delegation. At the federal level, the picture for future funding is questionable at best, and it's going to be important for us all to make sure that we convey the value of the work that you guys do in your schools, in your communities, for arts education. And so I encourage you to reach out to your federal representatives as well and make sure that they know what's going on. Finally, I want to put in a little personal agency plug, and that is that we are currently looking for a new director of administration. And so if you are a financial whiz, if you enjoy working the books and working within small arts agencies and state government, I encourage you to go to our website and to look for that position. And if you know somebody else that you think would be a good fit, please, I encourage you to look in on that. Finally, going back to making sure that everybody's informed. If you have any questions about the impact of the funding, either here at the state or at the federal level, certainly you can reach out to us, or I also encourage you to get to know the folks at the Nebraskans for the Arts, and we'll put the address on the feed so that you can reach out to them. They can inform you on all the issues that are going on and tell you how you can make your voice heard. Okay. Thank you, Doctor, and thank you again for the panelists, and I look forward to hearing what you have to say about these great applications. Thanks. Oh, Doctor, we got to hear you.
Oh.
Thank you.
There you go.
Anne, would you begin by discussing the annual Program in Arts Learning grant program and the panel process?
I'm happy to. And briefly, for the audience who has tuned in, thank you for joining us. If you haven't already done so, please take a moment. If you're joining via YouTube, note in the comment field, note your name, because we'd love to know who has been able to participate. And a reminder to panelists, even though you cannot see or hear the audience, they can see and hear you. We will take a short break around the top of each hour, but if anyone needs an additional break, just let us know. We will take additional breaks as needed. Whenever we take a break, we will let everyone know, and we will stop the live stream during the break, and we'll announce at what time we'll reconvene. And then we'll restart the live stream at that time. Regarding the panel process for the audience here, panelists have received and they've read all applications in advance. Each application has been assigned a primary and secondary reviewer who will lead off on the conversations, although all panelists will participate. Applications will be discussed and individually scored by each panelist according to the published criteria for this category. The panelist scores will then be averaged, and the applications will be ranked according to that averaged score from the highest to lowest. Panelists will then determine which of the applications merit funding based on those scores. A mathematical formula is applied later on to determine exact grant award amounts for approved applications. Award calculations will be based on the averaged score for each application, along with the available funds in this category. Higher ranking applications will receive a greater percentage of their request. Nebraska Arts Council members, this is important, are here. I am here to assist with the panel process, remaining neutral so as not to influence the panel process. So as such, Mike will not be engaging in the panel discussions unless needed to add clarification about a particular grant or procedures when appropriate. Final note, the applications will be discussed in alphabetical order. A copy of the order of applications should be available on the NAC website. We have 8 applications to review today. I think we are then ready. Mike, unless you have any other comments, we're all set to go. Okay, so we can go ahead and begin with the first.
Right. Thanks, Anne. Are there any questions among the panelists? All right. Well, then we'll start. Anne will provide a brief synopsis of each application, I'll then call upon the panelists one by one for your comments in this order: primary reviewer, then secondary reviewer, then our additional reviewer. We'll now proceed with the first application.
The first application is Consuming Fire. A Consuming Fire School of Dance is located in Chadron, Nebraska, which for those of you who are out of state, is in the far northwest corner of our state. Their program is a year-long series of dance classes in different dance forms for community members. And that's a synopsis. Thank you.
All right, Chris, your thoughts?
Hello. So thank you for submitting this application. I enjoyed reading it. Um, I uh, I think the name of the organization is very vivid. So uh, for the application, I think that one of the real strengths was related to providing access in very rural and remote areas. And I got that especially through the letters of recommendation and some of the section related to population impact. Um, I It took me a while to get there because those are at the end. So I wondered if maybe that's something that would be helpful to introduce more in the beginning of the application as well. I really appreciated the different dance styles offered through the program, and as well as the level of experience as a practitioner in this particular Cicchetti ballet method. I thought was a strength. A couple things that I think maybe I could have used a little more clarification on. One, it mentions in the program summary several different groups of students, like 15 are participating in this, 50 are participating in this. It wasn't clear to me if those are the same students participating in different activities or if it's different groups of students. So that would have been helpful to understand a little better, I think. Um, so there's also mention of cultural appreciation being one of the primary goals for the program. And I think I could have used a little more clarity on exactly how that works. And relatedly, as far as the evaluation, I think that there was a lot of strong evaluation related to the goals of technique, but it wasn't really clear to me how goals related to how the goal related to cultural appreciation might be evaluated. Um, Also, with the evaluations, I would have maybe liked to see some evaluations from either the students or maybe the parents. I think they can provide a lot of helpful feedback for the program. And I really appreciated the video example. I thought that was great. I kind of wanted just, out of personal curiosity to see some of the other types of dance represented there as well. I think that was the one was a jazz class. Um, and I think it's great too that there are students progressing through the formal evaluation program and then also the levels of the dance method. And I was just curious. It seems a smaller number of the students than are participating, of course, are actually passing through the formal levels of training. And I was just curious, is that due to the rigor of those evaluations, or is it more of an interest type thing? I think the budget was solid, and I will say the compensation for Claire Fox in particular seemed like it might be a little low for it being a month-long commitment. And then just to me, also the costume budget seemed a little low, so I wasn't sure if maybe they reuse costumes or if they supply some of their own. So just curious how that worked. And um, in the budget, it also showed a few of the methods of outreach. Um, And I think that to me, that might just be something to pay attention to in particular moving forward, especially with the comments regarding the decline in participation since the pandemic. But overall, I thought, those are just a couple things that I think could help clarify and strengthen the application. But overall, I thought it was very clear, and I appreciated reading it.
Thank you, Chris. Cody?
I enjoyed the application as well, and some comments that I have related to artistic quality. I really appreciated how it's a multiple, or the project includes multiple styles of dance, and I enjoyed as well that Chris said seeing the student choreographed dance style in the style of Bob Fosse. For planning and evaluation, even though it was a community organization, I noticed in the review or the grant application that they talked about being a member of NDEO, the National Dance Education Organization. And I was just kind of looking for those standards, but I understand that that may fall outside of the realm since they're a community organization. I think that they probably do a lot of the different dance standards that we have nationally and within the state, especially with the Respond and Connect ones with the different cultures and partners that they have. As far as outreach and engagement, I agree with Chris. Remember seeing that the decline in enrollment hurt by the pandemic, and that the organization and the project hasn't fully recovered from that. Um, and so just wondering if there could be other opportunities that they might be able to explore with partnering with other organizations. They have a strong connection to tribal communities as well. And just wanted to note that the poverty rate in this particular region of the state is pretty high. And so they're definitely serving a variety of populations.
Thank you, Cody. Camelia?
I just had one or two things I wanted to add. One is that I really appreciated that they were showcasing a previous student of the school. I think that's a really great example for the local community, and for students. It could be very inspiring to see that someone who they might have grown up with or who grew up in their community can move on in dance professionally. And I also appreciated that they seem to offer classes for all ages, which I think is really important in a small community like that. And I just wanted to emphasize as well that I was just very impressed that they seem to draw from a pretty big range, including from the Pine Ridge Reservation in South Dakota. That's really a huge commitment for families like that to bring their students to something like this, and speaks well of the program.
Thank you. All right, Anne, would you please give us a brief synopsis of the next grant?
Why don't we check to make sure everyone has had time to update or change scores as needed?
Sure.
And if you can give us a thumbs up or let us know when you're set to go.
And we just click save. There's like no final submission.
You just click save, Yeah.
Okay.
So. I might have missed it. Are we ready? I might have missed a note from Chris or to Cody. Okay. All set? Okay. Okay. Then the next grant is from the Lux Center for the Arts, which is based in Lincoln, Nebraska, which happens to be our state capital. The Lux Center's program runs over the course of the school year, where they take visual arts programming into 4 Title I schools in the Lincoln Public School system. And it's a long-running program that has gone on for over 14 years.
Thank you, Anne. Let's begin with Camellia, please.
Okay. This application, they had a very strong artist. It looked like the artistic quality was very strong. And the people that they are hiring to run the program in the schools are clearly very qualified. So I thought that was excellent that they were able to do that and employ these people. I did have some questions, and I think some of that was just how it was written. For example, they talked about the CLC structure, which I eventually figured out meant Community Learning Center, but I didn't know what that meant until like the very last letter, which was very far away. um, I was confused. So subsequently, that meant that I was confused throughout a lot of the application as to whether or not where the classes were held, when they were held. I wasn't really clear if this was the only visual art that these students get, or if there is visual art in their schools, which I think would have been an important little piece of information. It wasn't, and I didn't I didn't think that they made a very good case for the importance of the projects to the participants, other than by talking about the importance of arts education research and the value of that. Um, I think it is a very important project. Having arts programming for Title I schools is very, very important. But I think that they could perhaps emphasize that a little more in their application. And also, I did feel like they emphasized social emotional learning over arts learning to some extent, especially in the goals area. Um, I think maybe that's something that's required by the CLC structure. It would have been nice if they had said so. But I felt like they almost talked more, or there was a little bit more emphasis on that than there was on actual arts learning objectives. Um, And I would have liked to have known things like how long were the classes, because there's only 6 of them in a session. And so that really brought up a lot of questions for me about what could they really learn? In terms of the planning and evaluation, I thought it was really interesting that there doesn't appear to be anyone from either LPS or the CLC system involved in the planning and evaluation, and they weren't listed as partners. Um, on the timeline, the person who seems to be doing most of the work, Gwendolyn Lopez, was not mentioned anywhere else in the application. And they also mentioned an assistant director of education, and I wasn't sure if those 2 people were the same person or not. I was a little confused about this because it looks like the school schedule times for them to come, for them to take classes, but then on the evaluation, one of the questions is whether students re-enroll. So I felt like I was just confused a little bit at the time. And I was also a little bit confused about the evaluations. They said something about evaluations are provided by instructors, but I didn't see that teachers, or it wasn't, and then they have a teacher evaluation, but it wasn't clear if that was the artist or the school teacher. So there was some question. I also did not feel like the evaluation had a lot to do with art skills and knowledge. I wondered why supplies were not included in the budget. because supplies seem like they'd be a really critical component of this situation, of this. I would really like to see, considering that it looks like I figured out, I think, that there's 6-week sessions with one class per week. I think it would be helpful for them to maybe think about like some sort of a theme or something, or a kind of an overarching goal for that section, for that 6 weeks, like a focus on composition and perspective, maybe through different arts forms or something, in order to kind of tie it together. It sounds like it's mostly introductory, but then they talked about repeat students, so I'm assuming that, I don't know. It was just, I felt like I walked away with more questions than answers. And then I did want to just make a note that the clay lesson appears like it has quite a few components that relate to a different lesson in it. They did provide some demographic information, and they also mentioned that the public school system does not really allow them to do much, to get much demographic information. I think I gleaned from the application and the letters that the students are underserved, and I saw that they were making some kind of an effort to do some outreach. But the structure that they're in, I think, makes that really challenging. So I appreciate that they actually think about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Camelia. Chris?
So I also appreciated reading this application, and I do think I share a lot of the same questions as Camelia. So agree with a lot of what she said. I appreciate the experience of the artist. It seems like there's a lot of different experience that looks really interesting. Like the one whose work focuses on themes of labor, boredom, and escapism, I thought it would be really interesting in terms of working with students. Um, and for the evaluation, I wondered if it would be helpful to have a student evaluation process of the artistic process, it- especially since there's a lot of goals related to SEL. I think sort of embedding some of that reflective work and awareness into the artistic process could kind of take care of some of those goals more simultaneously. Um, and I did make a note. I really would have liked to have seen maybe some examples of student work or videos of lessons. Just a quick note with the budget in the artistic fees section, it looked like the math was just maybe slightly off from what I could tell. And in the program summary, it mentioned serving 350 students this coming year. However, it said last year only 84 were served in one semester. So I wasn't sure if I was misunderstanding or else how to account for that amount of growth. But again, thanks for submitting the application, and I enjoyed reading it.
Thank you, Chris. Cody?
I too echo some of the concerns that were brought up previously, just as around the clarity of the grant application. I do think that the project is very supportive of students from low-income households and things like that. One of the things that I noticed, they talked about students re-enrolling and trying to get students to come back. And so one of the suggestions that I had for that is perhaps creating a cycle of 2 to 3 years of lessons. So that way, as you're kind of moving students through, they're on an A, B, or C and might not repeat. I also saw that the name of the former director of education was included in the timeline, and I questioned that. I did look at the current website to see that the current director of education is not was not included in the timeline. So I think there needs to be some more attention to the grant proposal or grant application just to ensure for clarity there. And as far as planning and evaluation, so I'm the keeper of the standards in Nebraska. And so I felt that the lesson plan template, it had the same objective for every lesson. And I really thought that the grant application and the program would be stronger overall if those objectives were specific to that lesson. And I'd encourage the Lex Center to look at Nebraska's 21st century skills, which are found in our college and career ready standards, which is a separate document, just because there was so much alignment and so much talk of that in the grant application. I also would encourage the applicant to look more specifically at Nebraska standards rather than just listing a whole bunch of standards on every single grant or every single lesson plan that was there. And Lincoln Public Schools does offer visual art to all of their students, and perhaps they could even align with the current Lincoln Public Schools curriculum just to make sure that it all kind of jives together. So there's no tug of war between what students are learning during the school day as well as after in the CLC program. I really appreciated the strength of the program in that the targeted outreach of serving students who are from lower socioeconomic standards or lower socioeconomic status as well. And how that encourages students to be more engaged in their school and the information that they provided to show what they're doing is supporting students overall.
Thank you, Cody. Panelists, go ahead and take a couple minutes if you need to rescore things, and then give us a thumbs up when you're ready to proceed. All right, thank you. Anne, please give us a brief synopsis of the next application.
Yeah, the next application is from the Nebraska Writers Collective. Now, for this application, Cody has a conflict of interest, so the two reviewers will be Chris and Camelia, with Camelia being the primary reviewer. This particular program is called All Rights Reserved. It's the Writers Collective core program. It was launched in 2011, formerly called Louder Than a Bomb. Some of you may have heard of that before. It's offered free of charge to students in grades 7 through 12 across the state of Nebraska, and also in some schools in Southwest Iowa. Approximately 50 schools a year participate.
Right, thank you. Camelia, go ahead, please, and share your reflections.
This was a really exciting application to read. I really enjoyed it. Learned a lot about something very cool happening in Nebraska. It looked like a really strong program with a very clear curriculum that has been thoroughly tested and thought through. They have really strong teaching artists, and I appreciated very much their emphasis on diversity in their teaching artists, because especially considering that they work a lot in what looks like the inner city public schools, having teaching artists that I think reflect the diversity of the community is really important. I also really appreciated that they are really working hard to expand the program out into more rural areas and further into Western Nebraska, because I'm sure that there are a lot of kids who will just really benefit from this kind of program out in that area. And I wanted to say, especially, I watched several clips on YouTube beyond the one that they sent, and just wow, I mean, the kids were just so well prepared. And it was very, very engaging to watch. Really enjoyed that. For planning and evaluation, they have really clear and measurable goals with very specific ways that they are assessing them. Um, is one of the better ones that I saw. And I think part of that has to do with the fact that it looks like they really spend a lot of time and effort on this program, and they have the staff in place to take care of this. I did wonder if they asked the site people to evaluate, like the teachers and administrators from the schools, because I'm sure that that could be helpful feedback to them. They have a strong planning process, and their budget looks really reasonable. I was a little concerned about some of the sources of their support because I know that one of the big pieces was the humanities council, and I know that the federal humanities money is in jeopardy right now. So I really hope that that will not negatively impact their program. But it does look like the impression I received overall from the application was that it's a very professional organization, and that they will find ways to make up that loss if it comes to that. In terms of outreach and engagement, sorry, my notes disappeared. They provided the desk data they had within the confines of school policy. I thought that they worked really hard to respond to community needs. I don't know how much specific outreach they do beyond the students, but the performances, I'm sure, bring a lot of people in, just because they're really exciting to watch, it looks like. And once again, I just want to really commend them on moving further into Western Nebraska this year. I really think that their program has a lot to offer. So overall, I really enjoyed this program and was really excited to learn about it.
Thank you so much. All right, Chris, please.
Yeah, thank you. I definitely agree with a lot of what Camelia said. Um, just a couple things. So I wasn't, I'm not sure if I missed it, but maybe wasn't sure of like the total number of students overall participating across the state. Um, and at one point it mentioned 150, but I didn't know if that was for that particular, the more intensive kind of version of, but I thought it was really well done. I really enjoyed the work samples and the example of the student uh, recitation. Um, and for the teaching artist fees, I think it would have been helpful to maybe know more about hours worked in order to be able to evaluate their compensation. And let's see. Yeah, looks like a great artistic staff. And I did just make a comment. The application mentioned some of the conflicts in certain areas and with certain schools around different topics related to student identity. And I just wanted to say that I was glad to see that they're actively thinking about some of those um, challenges and how to work through some of those because I think that that's something that'll remain important in this work. So thank you for that.
Okay, thank you. Take a couple minutes if you need to revamp your scoring and then give us a thumbs up when you're ready to proceed. All right, it looks like we're ready to go. Anne, would you please move us into the next application?
Yes. The next application is from the Ollie Webb Center. And the program that they are requesting funding for is called the Art of Imagination, which empowers adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities by providing a platform for self-expression through the arts. Through year-round classes and creative opportunities, Oh, do we have Cody back?
Yeah,
I'm
he's
sorry.
back.
Cody, I don't know if you caught that. I'll start over. This is the Ollie Webb grant. It's for their program called the Art of Imagination, which empowers adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities by providing a platform for self-expression through the arts. They offer year-round classes and creative opportunities in which participants explore the arts while cultivating essential life skills that promote independence, literacy, and personal growth.
Thank you, Anne. All right, Cody, please let us hear your reflections.
I really enjoyed reading this grant application. I think that the purpose and the mission and the vision of the grant application is really of something to note. Regarding the artistic quality, the program has many partners within the arts community of Omaha. I specifically noted Y Arts, Hot Shop, Scottish Rite, Opera Omaha, Great Plains Theater, and even more from there. And it really seeks to show the ability that all individuals have opportunities for expression and skills that one hones through the performing arts. For the planning and evaluation, the program's designed to affect individuals of all abilities, and it really includes questions for all that are involved, not just the primary um, client or project participant, if you will, of the person with the disabilities, but all who are involved in the project. And while the program is rooted in anti-ableism, it's really not identified as such. And as I read through, I just really wanted to see survey results from the application and what they would do. They talked about the survey, I wanted to see those results because I think they'd really tell the story of the project. And I'd also like to see the responses as a reviewer from the diversely abled participants. As far as outreach and engagement, I felt like the program identified that it serves diverse abilities and those without. The application doesn't speak directly to neurodivergent participants and neurotypical. It just really raises the level of all of those involved.
All right, thank you. Camelia, please.
Yeah, I concur with a lot of what Cody said. In the artistic area, I appreciated that they appear to be moving into film, which I think, I mean, people in this area, in this category, are very underserved generally in the arts. But I think film is one of those areas where they're even more perhaps underserved or underrepresented as they are. So I think it's great to see them doing that as well as in theater. But the thing that I really appreciated about the move towards film is that there's a lot of potential to maybe even move that out of Nebraska or out of the Omaha community to really to better represent the capacities and of these people who have a lot to offer to the world. I did really appreciate also the little quotes of the value of the program from the participants themselves. And I thought that they really worked hard to get people who were highly qualified into the teaching positions. I did think that some of their goals were less measurable than others, and that's partly because I think of the population that they're working with a little bit. So I'm not necessarily criticizing. And I really appreciated that they have a lot of diverse sources of funding in their budget. I thought that also spoke well to the strength of the program. I did think that perhaps they could do a little more with their demographic information. It would be interesting to know if they are reaching people of color who are disabled as well. Um, since it's kind of self-selecting to some extent, it seems like they should be able to keep a little of that data. They also did not have much information about their wider audience and who really attends that. And they had excellent support letters. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Chris, please.
Yeah, I would just add, I agree with everything said, and I would just add that I really appreciated in the work samples that, you could tell that the participants were really engaged and sort of central to the whole process. So it was great to see.
All right, thank you. Panelists, go ahead and take what time you need to possibly rescore, and then give us a thumbs up when you're ready to proceed. All right, we are ready to go. And please give us a synopsis of the next application.
All right. Okay, the next application is from the Omaha Symphony Association. And this is for their virtual, I'm sorry, virtual classroom programming over the course of the next school year. And this program has three main components. It includes digital concerts, learning library with new videos for exploration of various components of classical music, and the PBS Learning Media Library.
All right, thank you. I believe for those viewing in that Cody has left as in a matter of a conflict of interest, and so we'll just hear from two of our panelists on this one. Chris, if you would please start us off.
Thank you. So yeah, I overall I think this was a really strong application and very clear. And there's definitely a lot of strengths of this program. And in particular, I really enjoyed the video examples. It seems really well done and thought out and engaging for students as far as, the props and the hired actors and the um, incorporating the symphony members and um, thanks as well for the detailed information regarding making updates to the program and why those updates were the case. The staff and artistic team seems very well qualified to be doing this, and I think that the uh, partnership with PBS is a helpful strength of the application. Couple of questions that I had. Just I think that the the goal of increasing access through the virtual programming is great, and that's clear. I'm also wondering just how in general, like how does this compare maybe to an in-person program, and how how is that sort of gap being bridged, which I think a lot of it is implicitly in the application materials and supporting materials. But maybe just and I think where I was thinking with this is just that it seems like maybe this was a program that started during the pandemic, and I know that some programs have moved, back toward focusing on in person. To just kind of more about what that process was, or that, it's been so impactful that this was determined to be the focus of the grant. And I was curious of how, in particular, you track the reach with the number of students. Is it based on the number of students in the school, or do teachers just sort of report the number of students that engage with the program? Um, and then as far as evaluation, I had a note. I wonder if student level evaluation data might be helpful. Um, because I think it mentioned teacher surveys. I wonder if a student survey might be helpful. And then this is related to what I was saying a couple minutes ago. Um, if there's any opportunities for maybe like in-class observations by the staff, um, so that the staff can actually see whether what you think is happening and what is being reported by the teachers is the case. Are students really engaged? Is the learning taking place in the way that you thought it might? Um, and and then I guess the other question I had, it mentioned of the program being used in some of the schools with no music teachers, which I think is great. I guess just sort of a more overarching question is, how does this program then help to generate the interest to maybe inspire them to hire a music teacher or to invest more in a music program? Um, I think it's great to fill that gap, but also, um, how are you making sure that it's not just like, well, oh, we have the symphony program, so we don't have to hire a music teacher kind of situation as well. So, what does that next step look like for your work with those programs, I think. But otherwise, really great application. I enjoyed reading it. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. All right, Camelia, please.
I really concur with everything that Chris said. Just a couple of questions. Um, I think this is a fantastic resource for Nebraska, and I know that traveling to be able to take advantage of a program of this kind in person, especially from the western end of Nebraska, even coming to Cheyenne, which is significantly closer, I think, like for Chadron than Lincoln or Omaha would be a very big investment. So I think having this opportunity is really fantastic. One question I had is whether or not they consider using music composed by people of color or by women in their pieces. It wasn't really clear how they select the music that they choose to focus on, but I do think it is important for kids to see variety in composers as well as the musicians. I think it's important that we don't only suggest that there are dead white men who compose. um, and sometimes I have noticed that symphonies can be a little bit blind to that. I think because they are so enthusiastic about bringing kids in to enjoy the classics, that they forget that if they don't see themselves in that it might be less, they might be less willing to be involved. Um, I They did provide standards, but I did think that they were a little bit weak on explaining their own goals for doing this program. And also I felt like I wanted to see some kind of overall goals from the symphony for why they were doing this program, and I didn't really see that. Um, and I do really concur with Chris on the evaluation. It's mostly teacher surveys, but I don't see how they're really determining whether or not students are really learning what it is that they're intending for them to learn. They have a strong planning process and a good budget. Their demographics are really thin, and I wondered if they could use the teacher surveys with the registered teachers to gather a little more of that information. It would really be interesting to have more of a sense of whether they're reaching some of those lower economic groups and students of color. But overall, I mean, just to have this kind of a resource is really important. I think I really appreciate that most of these resources are free to the whole Nebraska community to be involved in. But I also think that sometimes free resources are not valued as much as resources that we pay for. And making them free means that sometimes you have no idea who's really using them, because you have no way to track that information. So it's just that's a tension to be thinking about. And I really want to just emphasize what Chris said as well about looking at the advocacy side of this, because you don't want this to replace a strong music program in a school. This is a wonderful enhancement, but it's not a replacement for a program that has objectives that builds on itself over time. And anything that a program like this can do to encourage schools to think about music education in a more holistic way in-house is really important. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, as we bring Cody back in, then any rescoring you need to do that at this time, please, and then give us a thumbs up when you're ready to go on.
So I have a question. We usually take a break at the top of the hour. Should we go ahead and take a break now? And then come back to the final 3 grants afterwards? How do you feel about that?
That's fine.
Would that work? It's 10:04. Let's come back at 10:10 if that works for everyone. We'll take a 6-minute break. So remember to mute yourself and turn off your cameras, please. We'll return at 10:10. Okay, looks like everybody's back. Sam, if you want to resume the live stream.
All right. And lead us into the next grant application, please.
Yes, indeed. Our next grant is from the Papillion La Vista Arts Network, which offers musical theater opportunities for Sarpy County elementary and middle school students each summer. They produce a 2-week-long program in which students, I lost track of here. Sorry, I lost my. They prepare and stage a musical. This year, they will prepare and stage a musical titled The Big Bad Wolf's Melodramatic Evil Scheme, specifically written for this year's camp.
Thank you. All right. Let's please hear from Camelia.
Okay, this is a little bit of a simpler project than many of this group, but it nonetheless offers some really strong arts learning opportunities for students. The students are involved in most aspects of this, of putting a play on, which is an incredible experience for elementary and middle school kids who are often super underserved where theater is concerned. I thought they had really qualified people working with them, and I really appreciated the emphasis on originality and writing plays and not just using something canned. Or it looks like there's a lot of room for that here, and I appreciate that. I did want to say that if they are thinking about expanding at all, I saw that they do a little bit of technical theater with the kids, but I think that they could perhaps consider expanding that a little bit with maybe even a technical theater track that allows the kids to also learn about like lighting design. It looks like they're involved somewhat in the props and the costumes, but technical theater, I think, is an area that a lot of theater programs don't pay enough attention to. And it is an area where a lot of kids and people can get work across a wide variety of situations. So I think exposing them early to the wide variety of ideas and opportunities within the technical theater side is really important. So I appreciate that they have a start on that. And if they are looking to expand, that's one area I would really recommend they consider. Their budget is, it's looks standard to me. Their planning process is clearly outlined. I would have liked to have seen somewhat more measurable goals with evaluation to back them up because there is serious arts learning, but I didn't really feel like the evaluation captures that. However, given the size of this organization and the fact that it's a small community organization, that may also be somewhat beyond their capacities with the resources that are available to them. And the fact that they've been going for 27 years speaks well to the success of the program overall. As far as outreach and engagement, I thought that they had pretty reasonable demographic information. They're definitely responding to a need. The performance serves as outreach, but another way that they could engage in outreach that I've seen in some other theater education programs is by getting parents involved in some of the technical aspects of the parents or community members involved in some of the technical aspects, which could also help maybe relieve staff if staff are over extended. And you know, they're clearly serving a group that needs these opportunities more than they get because kids love this kind of opportunity. And so they're really giving them something that they wouldn't get anywhere else or in their school system. Thanks.
Thank you. Cody, please.
I really enjoyed reading this grant application as well. I felt like the project was clearly organized and efficient, and it has many repeat participants, which speaks to the value of it, and really engages the students in the creative aspects of arts education. Um, the grant applicant used a lot of the Nebraska art standards, had a pretty thorough understanding of the standards. As a reviewer, I'm echoing what Camelia said too about the evaluation of it. I, as a reviewer, would have liked to have seen the rubric that was used for both the formative and summative assessments, and perhaps even going just one step further to see a statistical analysis showing the growth that is based on that for both those formative and summative assessments that they reference in the grant project. I just think that that would make it a little clearer as a grant reviewer. As far as outreach and engagement, they do a lot within the Papillion and Levistic communities. I noticed in the grant application that scholarships were available for students that who were unable to afford the tuition, and if possible, just having some information, demographic information, not personal identifiable information on who those students are, and if they're seeing any trends from any particular group or any part of the community might strengthen like where they might direct their outreach efforts in the future. And I just thought that the project overall, they've done a lot to promote the project, especially considering that it involves children and families with busy schedules.
All right, thank you, Cody. Chris, please.
Thank you. I agree with everything said so far, and I would just add one thought I had. I really appreciated that these are original works, and that you work with a living writer and director and composer, and I'm sure that saves money on performance rights and all those things as well. Um, I just wondered if there, I think that's a really exciting opportunity to maybe have the students to be more directly involved in that creative process as well, especially maybe some of the returning or more experienced students. I don't know when in the timeline maybe the artistic staff begins to work on some of that, but even having students in on like the devising process and which show are we thinking about? Like what story are we wanting to tell? Or if there are students with particular strengths or interest in any of those areas like songwriting or writing in general, I think that could be a really cool opportunity to engage them in that creative process, especially because you mentioned a lot of the students, their access is in their middle school programs that are essentially student led. And so enabling them to have those additional experiences, I think would be really helpful, especially in that translating to that context where they are making a lot of the creative decisions themselves. And then also just wondered, are there opportunities for student leadership roles after they age out of the program, like maybe bringing back experienced high school students to sort of serve as facilitators or assistant teachers, something like that. But thank you for the application.
Thank you. All right. If you need to rescore anything, panelists, please do so, and then give us a thumbs up when you're ready to proceed. All right. All right. You're on, Anne.
Okay. So, our next grant is from Ruth Davidson Hahn and Company. The program is called Dance for Parkinson's and Contemporary Dance for the Ageless and Unstoppable. The project utilizes the power of dance music, and creativity to improve mobility and quality of life. Sessions are offered to people with Parkinson's disease, their caregivers, spouses, and partners at the Nebraska Ballet Theater and School in Lincoln. That's a good synopsis, quick synopsis.
Thank you, Anne. Okay, Chris, please start us off.
Thank you. So thanks for submitting this application. I really enjoyed reading it, and I think it's a really strong and impactful project. And um, I think I appreciate that it's based on a sort of strong and proven sort of international even model. And the focus on serving this particular population and the your articulation of the specific benefits to that population, I think was very strong. I liked as well the internship opportunity with college dance majors, and especially the fact that it leads them to certification. I think is really that's a great addition to this program. Um, I thought the updates you mentioned to the program were really interesting, and just out of curiosity, would have liked to have seen some more details about why some of those updates were chosen. Um, I also really appreciated the news articles, especially sort of in terms of from an advocacy standpoint. I think it does a really good job of advocating for the value of this program and using the arts and to sort of complement health related public service goals as well. Um, let's see. I think there were a lot of strong partnerships, and I really appreciated the part about I don't remember exactly what it said, but basically not wanting the participants to feel kind of overly observed or overly evaluated, which, I think in this, especially since they're already sort of, patients to some extent anyway, I think that's really important. However, I just wondered in general, I really think that this project has the potential to, um, really have some interesting, you know, like an impact study or research study on the value of this. So I was just curious if the organizations maybe looked into any opportunities to partner with, a health agency or health related researchers to sort of I guess more substantiate more some of these benefits and to sort of make them a little more clear. Again, thinking in terms of advocacy and also, it mentioned the high prevalence of Parkinson's in Nebraska in particular. So, I could see this as being something that, could really help with advocacy relating to arts and health as well. So, um, and similarly, just was curious if there are plans to expand or train more artists in different areas of the state to implement this or similar programs. But again, thank you for submitting.
All right, thank you. Thank you, thank you. Okay, Camelia, please.
You're muted.
I always find grants like this really interesting because I feel like they are doing fantastic work that's really valuable and really important. But in some ways, I'm not always sure that it's arts learning. And so even though it's an arts program, I'm not sure that the arts are really what's important to it. And so that sometimes makes me question a little bit like where it belongs. But like I said, it's clearly a dance program. The people who are running it are highly qualified dance people. And I think that's really important. I just and I love the internship program. Um, I do think it looks like a fairly static program, but that's probably partially because of the community that it serves. And I think that's, that's probably okay for this situation. I would have liked to have known a little bit more about the evaluation they're using because it did look like they were working with somebody from a university in Denver. And I didn't also see any kind of evaluation of the internship program, which I think could be helpful. I didn't exactly understand, um, like they talked about reporting to several other organizations, and I wasn't really sure why that qualified as evaluation or why we needed to know that. Um, and in terms of outreach and engagement, I really wondered how their outreach was doing because they mentioned publicizing to a wide variety of really specific kinds of groups like the Arab American group and um, a few others. And I thought that was great that they were doing that, but then there's no demographic information for us to understand if any of that marketing is working for them. And I would have liked to have seen, I think that it would be possible for them to collect at least some basic demographic information about their population, other than that they are older adults with Parkinson's or mobility issues. And especially because in some of the ethnic communities, I think dance might be something of a hard sell. That seeing whether or not those outreach efforts that they are trying to make, whether or not they're working, and if not, thinking about how could they do it differently might be helpful. I did want to note that one of the support letters is very, very old. It's from 2020. I think that it would be a good idea to update and get something from a current participant or even from the person who so graciously gives them the studio space. Um, and I also wondered if one way that they could expand their reach um, and expand this program across Nebraska, especially since they mentioned that Parkinson's is such a big issue in Nebraska, would be by offering some classes to some of the other dance teachers in the state. Like it immediately occurred to me, like the Consuming Fire studio this might be something that would be a really great addition to their lineup of programming out in Chadron. If they had the opportunity to learn how to do this, or maybe could hire one of the people who had interned with this community out in Chadron, that there could be some really great connections that way across the state. So I hope that they will think about that. I did notice that they do try to expand their reach a little bit through PBS, I think it was. And I thought that was also really excellent. Um, Overall, I mean, I think it's a really, really valuable program. Oh, one other question I had was, I noticed one of the other grants got a pretty significant amount of money from a health department source, and I wondered why this organization wasn't tapping into that, and if they just didn't know how to do that. Because I would think that this would be really qualified for a similar type of program.
Thank you, Camelia. Cody, please.
I really enjoyed reading this grant project. I echo some of the same concerns or same thoughts as far as is it truly an arts learning type of project. One of the things, though, that really stood out to me as I was reading the grant project was the statement that the participants are dancers and not patients. And so really looking at that holistic approach to well-being through the arts. I felt like the expectations of the program were really clear, and how it goes into different techniques and different and ties to different things that dance can do specifically that will assist individuals who have neuro um, retrogression, such as the fluidity raising from the chair, helping to reduce falls, the core strength for that, and the balance and weight, and how that translates into other parts of their life. I agree and echo what Camelia said. Did I completely get your name wrong again? And
No,
so
you're good.
I got okay. And said with not fully understanding the relationship and partnership and internship with UNL, University of Nebraska Lincoln, and how that really looks in the purpose of that as far as the evaluation goes for it. And then also the connection that Chris had said to, I believe, Denver or university out of state. I did really appreciate their reading the grant and felt one of the strengths was that the engagement extends to the caregivers as well, and that they're trying to expand their outreach through PBS and making it kind of an on-demand, so that way if it's can't get to a particular class or would like to do it in between time, but that is available to the participants as well. And I know a few other programs that happen that are similar around the state, and like Camelia said, we do wonder if there would be any partnering or expansion that could happen just because I think it could be a very valuable um, project to reach a lot of Nebraskans that are suffering from um, uh, conditions and diseases that do affect the neuro health of an individual.
Thank you. All right, rescore if necessary, please, and then thumbs up when you're ready for us to move on. All right. Back to you, Anne.
Okay, the final grant that we will review today is from the University of Nebraska Department of Music. It is for the UNO Great Plains Jazz Festival in 2026. It's annually hosted in Omaha and takes place the last weekend in February. The 2025 festival marked its 53rd year, welcoming approximately 1,000 students from dozens of middle and high school jazz ensembles across Nebraska and beyond.
Thank you. All right, kick us off here, Cody.
This project places learning and broad reach at the forefront of the application. I enjoyed reading about the project. The applicants continually refining the logistics of the festival, and I know that the festival has grown substantially over the past few years. I would have appreciated seeing a little more information on the 50 schools and 1,000 students that are involved. A lot of the demographic information that was shared was specific to the location in which the festival is held, which is the Omaha Public Schools. But I guess I would have liked a little broader reach of who we're actually reaching, not just where it happens to be located. Um, as far as planning and evaluation, and the standard is misidentified in the narrative. The National Anchor Standard number 1 in music is creating tradition emerging ensembles, generating conceptualized artistic ideas. And it was a high school proficient indicator, was what I believe the applicant was going to. So I would really think that the application could be stronger if the applicant looks at the national standards. I did note that the National Association for Music Education is not the author of the national standards, but the National Coalition of Art Standards is, and that NAFME is a member of NCAS. I would encourage the applicant to look perhaps more at the Respond and Connect standards as well as just simply the Perform standards or the Create standards. I noticed that in the evaluations, a lot of the standards that were addressed were student outcomes, but we weren't seeing the outcomes in the grant narrative that directly related to students, but the evaluation was more to the individual teachers. And I understand that during a festival, that could be somewhat of a challenge to address those outcomes and how you would evaluate it. So that's why I think perhaps a Responder Connect standard could strengthen the application, or as far as a Responder Connect, a standard within the Responder Connect artistic process. Um, and I would encourage them to do greater unpacking of those standards, and again, just not have it really be an assessment of student learning, not just of teacher perception. Um, the project really provided access to high-level accomplished jazz musicians, and so really wanted to bring that as one of the definite strengths of the project. As far as the outreach and engagement, again, I'd like to know a little bit more about the demographics of the students that are participating in the program. Obviously, if 1,000 students are participating, there is broad reach. The letters of support, it looked to me like they were the clinicians that were participating in the project, and I just wondered if there would be any letters of support, at least the ones that I remember, that could be from the students or the families themselves, especially the outreach that was done to offer complimentary tickets to schools that had, I can't remember the demographic that they used, if it was um, Title I schools or whatever. It was 50% of OPS schools that were participating. They were offering free tickets to, or I can't remember exactly how that was stated in the grant. And I recognize that that's definitely an outreach that's being made, but I'm wondering if there could just be a letter of support from someone in that would, to me, would strengthen the grant. Um, I think that's it for me.
All right, thank you, Cody. Chris, please.
Thank you. And thanks, Cody. You covered a lot of what I had in there. Um, I think sort of relating to something Cody brought up, for the teacher, for the workshops, for the educators, it mentioned specifically workshops on music and rhythm. And I was wondering if there are um, other workshops as part of this, maybe relating to um, areas other than performance, like maybe um, curriculum development or maybe administrative or organizational challenges related to having a jazz program in a school, or even culturally responsive teaching. In the explanation for the standards, it mentions something about how history can present challenging topics of discussion for teachers, which I think is certainly the case in jazz music as well. And so maybe having opportunities for workshops on how to engage students in those types of discussions, um, which again I think relates to somewhat to what Cody was mentioning with incorporating some of the other artistic standards relating to responding and connecting those sorts of things, and just was curious if maybe some opportunities for student level feedback about the event might be helpful. I mean, you have a lot of them coming in and out, so I was thinking maybe even like a QR code or something they could scan, or maybe there's a way to make it engaging, but that could be helpful to get some different perspective on the event as well. And then I was kind of curious as far as you know, how many jazz programs are in the state, and how many is this program reaching? And are are the programs that are not participating in this, is it related to specific access barriers such as transportation or funding and that sort of thing, and maybe looking at ways to address that could strengthen the overall project as well. But I enjoyed reading it. It sounds like a great project.
Thank you, Chris. Camelia, please.
Uh, I enjoyed reading it. It's clearly a very strong festival that does emphasize arts education. I thought it was interesting that the application really focused on arts learning, but when you got to the budget was all about it's all about the headliners. And as far as I could tell, the headliners weren't really involved in the arts education components at all. So I just thought that was an interesting, I don't know, just a disconnect, I guess, because I think the headliners are really important and they do provide their own form of arts education, because listening to top-notch musicians is very important. Although it wasn't really clear to me how many of the people who were streaming through the festival, all these groups from around the area were actually attending the concerts. That was another little bit of a disconnect for me. And I thought it was interesting. Cody, I think, mentioned the demographic information was very Omaha Public Schools focused, but this is a program that's not focused on Omaha Public Schools. And I thought it was interesting that they did not feel like they could collect some demographic information about who was actually showing up at the festival through their registration process. Because having read grants of similar types of things, I know that they have some kind of registration process. They know which groups are coming in advance and from where. So it seems like they should be able to pull a little bit of that out. I didn't also, I didn't really think they made a very good case for jazz students generally being underserved. I mean, they might be. I just don't know. I didn't think they really made that case. And then my last comment is Cody mentioned, the standards, and they talked about how they could only talk about two, but I was also looking for what the arts learning goals of the event were that weren't necessarily standards. Like, what did they want people to walk away from the festival having learned? And I didn't really think that they did that. I do want to just commend them, however, that they seem to be very responsive to evaluation, and the evaluations that they receive. A student level evaluation, I think, could be helpful as well. But the fact that they pay really close attention and try to make adjustments in order to make it a better program is great.
All
Thank you.
right. Thank you very much. Okay, do any rescoring that you need to, and then give us a thumbs up when you're ready to move to the next portion. All right. Now that all applications have been discussed and scored, we're going to soon take a 5-minute break. During this time, the Nebraska Arts Council staff will tally the scores and prepare information for final discussion. When panelists reconvene, we'll review the procedures and make final determinations. I want to do a public thank you for our grant panelists and all the work that went into their thoughtful and helpful reflections. Grant applicants, please be aware you will be notified by mid-June about the funding decision of your project after that goes through Arts Council board meeting. The final portion of the meeting is closed to the public, and at this time we'll say goodbye to the applicants and the members of the public who have joined in. Thank you.